Welcome, everyone, to the Week 2 Season 15 pregame show. I am your host, Mike Peters, along with my partner in crime today, David Roy. We are getting ready for an exciting matchup tonight between two contenders in the AFC South. On the screen here, you see these two teams matched up last year. This is their Week 5 matchup. It was the only gameplay between these two users. The Texans came out on top 26-24, and at the time they were 4-1. The Titans won 3 in a row before they faced Jacksonville and then Tennessee, and then Houston, and they kind of fell off. Went from 3-0 to 8-8. This game that you see on the screen, Brock Osweiler was injured in week 1 of last year. He did not play in this game. CJ Beathard came in, played in relief, had 4 interceptions, but led the Texans to a win. Marcus Mariota, who did play in that game, will not play in this game. He was injured in the preseason, and he will be out. TJ Barrett will be taking over for the Tennessee Titans. We'll get the preview show going as we move into the Houston offense. David, we take a look at Houston here. Osweiler's back. He's going to play in this game. He threw for 495 yards last week. What do you see transpiring with Osweiler in this one?
I think the thing that you have to realize with Brock Osweiler, and I think the big problem last week, he threw for 495 yards, but I think a big part of that was they ran a lot of plays that took time to develop, a lot of deep throws down the field. They have the wide receivers to go deep. DeAndre Hopkins comes back this week, but I think when you talk about those long developing plays, you have to remember that as Brock Osweiler holds the ball, the longer that he holds that gives more time to the pass rush to get to him. And as good as this pass rush is in Nashville, it could be a bit of a different story. I don't think he'll throw for 495 yards. And I don't think he'll throw for, he won't have 0 interceptions this week either. This secondary is one that can punish Osweiler if he makes poor decisions. And I also have to think that they might be missing Braxton Miller. With Will Fuller out, who's going to step up in that number 2 receiver spot?
That's an interesting point. They traded away Braxton Miller in the preseason, and they figured they had enough depth, but then Will Fuller goes down the next week, and he's out. That shifts Devin Allen into the number 2 receiver role, which he's not really a big guy. He's not really slotted for that. We'll see how he does tonight. So that's going to be interesting. They have some young guys that they backed up. They got a young guy named Gannon who they picked up, and he's been playing a little bit. He's been kick returning, and he's been used a little bit in the 3rd and 4th receiver role. So seeing what he can do is going to be interesting. He had 7 grabs last week. Definitely going to be interesting to see how Houston's able to navigate that. Now, the run game is pretty good, but so is Tennessee's run defense. Obviously, Lamar Miller is going to be a factor in that. If he can open up the run game, it's going to take a lot of pressure off of Brock Osweiler, excuse me. Adoree Jackson had the big pick 6 last week. He had 2 picks in the last game that these two teams played last year. So, as you mentioned, they got a dangerous secondary. You definitely got to watch out for it. How do you see the running game for Houston faring in this matchup?
Lamar Miller is definitely a threat that you have to keep in mind, and I think Tennessee is definitely going to have to game plan for him. And I think this is something that they kind of expected coming into this when they traded for Eric Berry. Eric Berry, he's a great free safety. He can do a lot in the passing game, but he's also somebody who's not afraid to come up and lay the wood on running backs. And I think as I watch Lamar Miller last week, he does have that explosion. He's very explosive when he hits a hole. He can turn that corner a little bit, but he doesn't, because of his age, he seems a little kind of hesitant to kind of unload on the defense. He doesn't really want to put down his shoulders and just drive forward. So I think if Tennessee can keep Lamar Miller contained, it'll go a long ways towards shutting down this running game in Houston.
It's a good point. It's a tough thing to do. Lamar Miller is one of the more dangerous backs in the league. He had 66 yards last week, had 127 in that game that we showed you earlier, the second game between these two teams last year, the only one the two users played each other. So definitely going to be interesting. Segueing into that, we're talking about how Houston can move the ball. Let's take a look at how Tennessee is going to try to shut them down. Last week, Tennessee forced 4 turnovers against Jacksonville. A lot of people picked Jacksonville to win the AFC South this year, but they got off to a bad start against a very tough defense that we see here on the screen. Dory Jackson with that pick six, which we talked about earlier. 55 sacks also by this unit a year ago. That was a surprising thing that I wasn't really aware of. Got a lot of weapons, like you mentioned. What do they really got to do, though, to shut down this Houston offense?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you have to keep Lamar Miller contained. I think that's step number one. If you can take away that running game and you can take away that short passing game, make Brock Osweiler hold the ball. We saw what happened last week. He held the ball for too long, caused some hurried throws because a pass rush was allowed to get to him. His pass protection fell apart. The right side of that offensive line seemed to struggle. So I think if Tennessee can, really force them to step up, it's going to go a long way. And because of Osweiler holding the ball for so long, it led to a strip sack, which Melvin Ingram recovered, and it put San Diego up by 10 last week. So I really think that ball security is a big issue for Houston, and it's a very opportunistic defense in Tennessee. They will make you pay for turning over the football. And I think as we go forward, and you look at Blake Bortles last week, completed only 4 of his first 10 passes. One of those incompletions was a pick six. Tennessee's defense is very strong, and I think it's one of those teams and one of those units that it flies under the radar a little bit, and it'll catch you by surprise. They have playmakers in every level of this defense.
They do. Khalil Mack being one of them. We talked about how he knocked out Osweiler last year. They got Clay Matthews, T.J. Ward. They got some. They like veteran guys, and they've got some veteran guys to go along with young guys like Adoree Jackson, and they can really put the heart of it. Ryan Shazier is another guy that they picked up. They've done a really good job of putting playmakers on this team and putting guys in position to make plays, and we saw it last week. I think they're going to really get a test this week. Was last week an aberration, or can they do it consistently? We're going to find that out today. We're definitely going to get that answered, but it's definitely going to be a story to watch. The running game's obviously a big part. Passing game's going to be a part too, but turnovers are the big thing, and that pressure on the edge. Is there anything that Houston's going to be able to do to shut them down, or is it going to be more or less they're going to just have to kind of contain it?
They're going to have to confuse this Titans defense. And I think that's a big thing going forward. And I think that's a real reason why they got to get Lamar Miller rolling early, set up the play action, force that defense to bite down so that Osweiler can get those open throws and get that ball out of his hands a little bit faster. If you can confuse this defense, it'll go a long way to help open up some other aspects of this game.
That's a good point. Confusing the defense is something that's big in any aspect, but especially this defense, which is full of playmakers, a lot of veteran guys. You definitely want to confuse them as much as you can. So I think, trying to come out in some different looks and doing different things, trying to keep them off balance, using some screens and draws, mixing inside and outside, taking some shots deep, going underneath. Definitely got to keep them off balance and on their toes, so to speak. Speaking of on their toes, the Tennessee offense is going to be led this week by J.T. Barrett. Barrett got off to a rough start last week. It was his first start of his career. He did come in relief of Mariota one game last year, but first start last week, he was kind of up and down. He had some moments where he looked pretty decent, but then he also struggled at times, as we're seeing here on some of the highlights from last week. Barrett's going to have to step up this week. He's going to have to complete more than 53% of his passes, and he can't throw 3 interceptions to only 2 touchdowns. Obviously, the run game is going to be important as well. Getting Capers going is going to be important. Foreman, who has been one of the really solid backs, allowed him to get rid of Derrick Henry, is going to be a big key also. How do you see the Tennessee offense attacking this Houston defense, and is Barrett going to improve in week 2, or are we going to see a little bit more of what we saw last week?
Well, it's a tall order to ask a quarterback in his second career start to start not just in a hostile environment like he is in Houston. Remember, it's their home opener tonight. But on top of that, this is back-to-back road games for Tennessee against 2 division rivals, the top 2 teams of the division. Jacksonville, the Super Bowl runner-up last week. Now, Tennessee caught them by surprise. But Houston went 14-2 last year, and they won the division. And I think as you look at J.T. Barrett, there are some concerns. He doesn't have much of a deep ball. He really doesn't. He's scattershot deep at best. And the pass protection seemed to struggle a little bit. Can he be rattled? Can he be shaken? But I think the big key for Tennessee, if you're going to get JT to be effective, keep him mobile. Don't make him stand in the pocket and deliver. Let him get outside. Get him involved in the running game a little bit more. He had 5 carries last week for 21 yards. Get him involved a little bit more. Run the read option. do things like that. It's a strong running game with Stacey Capers. He's got big playability. He can strike from about anywhere on the field. And he averaged last week 7.5 yards a carry with 11 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown, one of them being a big run. And I think the weapons are there. DGB, Tyreek Hill, who you traded for, he needs to get involved a little bit more. He only had one catch last week. And Kevontae Turpin, as you see there, had a great reception for a catch. The weapons are there. But to get JT to deliver to them, he's got to get out of the pocket and do it. And that involves some play action, some rollouts, maybe just, let him improvise a little bit, because that's what JT does even better than Marcus Mariota. That's what Barrett thrives in. He's not as accurate, and I think to do that, you've got to let him loose a little bit.
Well, it's interesting you brought up Tyreek Hill and the mobility of J.T. Barrett. The one completion or reception that Hill had last week was on a rollout by Barrett, and he hit him. That's one of the highlights that's playing in the background here. So I think it will be interesting, especially against this defense. With J.J. Watt moving the defensive tackle, having him rush up the middle. You guys got they have guys like Clowney and Merciless coming off the edge. You're going to have to do some different things. You're going to have to get Barrett mobile, get him moving around, let him scramble a little bit. Maybe send some guys deep, and if it's covered, don't take the shot. Let him run around a little bit. Try to create some danger with his feet. Make them use some spies and some contains. Try to take some of that pressure away, and then you're going to buy more time for him to throw the ball around a little bit. The running game is definitely something that's going to be key in this game. We talked about Capers. Obviously had a good game. Foreman is strong also. The offensive line, though, is a little sketchy for Tennessee. Great front seven, especially the front four for Houston. Do you think that they're going to be able to get that running game going? Can this line hold up against this ferocious Tennessee or Houston pass rush? Or do you think it's going to be kind of one of those things where they're getting stuffed in the backfield all game and Barrett is going to have to make plays for them to win?
I think the pressure is definitely going to be there for Barrett, but I think Capers may surprise you. If Tennessee can open it up, pound away at the inside, and set up some of those big chunk plays for Capers, let him get to the edge. He's the faster of the two running backs in this Titans backfield. If you can get him off the edge and you can get him around to the outside, he's going to make some big plays. So you have to set that up, though. And how do you set that up? Some underneath pass plays and really pound away at that interior defensive line, bring everybody in tight, and then force it around the edge.
Well, you bring up a good point as far as trying to get it outside, but it's easier said than done, as the Houston defense has the edge set by Merciless and Clowney. They do a great job of shutting down the run. They held San Diego to negative yards rushing late into that game last week. They did, however, allow 380 yards, 81 yards passing, so a little bit suspect as far as their pass defense. As far as last week goes, we'll see what they were able to do to fix that. If they're not able to get the run game going and putting the ball in Barrett's hands, is that going to be something that's going to work out for Houston? Do you think they're going to be able to improve on their pass defense a little bit and shut down the run, or how do you see that transpiring?
Well, the front seven is great for a reason. It's great because that back four, that secondary, is not great. They gave up way too many chunk plays, and not all of them were big shots downfield. Some of them were intermediate routes. And so I think what JT is going to have to do is he's going to have to complete those intermediate routes and be very accurate in the intermediate passing game to get those faster guys, those agile guys, to have that matchup of being one-on-one, make the move, get away, and break free to make big plays.
Yeah, one-on-one matchups going to be interesting, although, like we talked about, the line, the offensive line for Tennessee doesn't necessarily want to see a whole lot of one-on-one matchups. We see Deshaun Kaiser struggling against this line last week, and he was kind of running for his life. And it's definitely going to be interesting with another young quarterback, although Kaiser's got some more starting experience than Barrett, but seeing another young quarterback back there and see how he deals with that ferocious pass rush. That's definitely going to be something that I'm excited to see. Overall, we're about to get in the kickoff and see what's going on. Before we get down to the field, what do you see as the final score? What's going to transpire in this game? Give us a prediction. Don't hold any punches. If you're going to pick it, you're going to put money on it. How's this game turn out?
I would put money on Brock Osweiler over JT Barrett. I don't know if Barrett has what it takes to be able to play well enough to come away in this environment. That being said, these defenses, both of them, are no slouches. Now, Tennessee has a better defense overall, but I think I'd give the edge to Houston's front seven. That being said, it's a battle of the trenches. It's going to be a bit of a low, mid-scoring game. And I think Houston's going to pull it away 24-21, and I think it's going to be a solid game to watch.
Well, it's interesting that you have it 24-21. I was going to say my prediction is going to be 27-21. Houston's going to pull it out. Like you, I think Osweiler is going to be the difference in this game. I think it's going to be different on both sides. I think it's not going to be the same game plan. Obviously, Barrett's a different kind of quarterback, so it's going to be interesting to see all around and see how it goes, but definitely going to be interesting to watch. I hope all you guys are excited to tune in and watch it. I know I am. I know the guys are heading out on the field. I'm getting excited for it. David, we appreciate you tuning in. One of these days, we're going to try to get you into the booth as like a color commentary guy. We're not set up for it yet, so I don't know I want to thrust you into that, but we appreciate you. The teams are heading out on the field. We'll say bye to you guys. And everybody go get your popcorn and your drinks. We're about to kick off.